Hello there, everyone. Good day to you all, no matter which point in time you are at. This is Liz, your witchy big sis, here today to read you the real crimes behind the best episodes of the hit TV show Law and Order. I got this from a library in the school that I had previously worked at. Got the old school slip in there. It's great. Hardcover and everything. We are going to be reading story number 7. It's a sweet preteen and her slow-witted friend unalive, a little boy. I'm going to give you a few seconds to click away if you do not like darker content. I'm going to give you 1, Are you good? Alright, sweet. They're gone. For the people who are able to handle this, and no hate to those who are not, that's completely fair. This is really morbid stuff. So story number 7. It's a true story based off of 2 British 10-year-olds who were charged with the abduction and unalive of 2-year-old James Bulger in Liverpool, which is where the Beatles are from, if that says anything. We are going to go ahead and get into this. Get cozy, wrap up in a robe, get yourself something to drink with our hot cocoa, peppermint schnapps and hot cocoa, pop, whatever. Let us sit back and relax to the sounds of me reading to you. The video is slightly grainy, a bit too yellow. At first glance, it seems a touching family scene. An older boy gently leaning his baby brother by the hand through the mall. Their mother surely trailing behind, off camera, pushing a shopping cart filled with groceries, happy that her sons get along so well. Another boy, perhaps a third brother or a schoolmate, walks ahead of the pair. The truth is far more sinister. The boys are strangers to the toddler. Off camera, there is no mother following in their wake, just more strangers. Shuttling by with packages in tow, oblivious to the youngsters. The older boys are friends, 2 10-year-olds playing hooky from school, 2 10-year-olds shoplifting candy and trinkets, 2 10-year-olds kidnapping a toddler for fun. February 12th, 1993 begins a gloom Friday morning. In the working-class neighborhood of Maryside, Liverpool, a 10-year-old Robert Thompson thinks it's a perfect day for sagging, the British term for playing hooky from school. He leaves home at the usual time and heads toward his elementary school, just in case his mother is watching. On the way, he encounters his schoolmate, John Venables. It is John's turn to take home the class gerbil for the weekend, but ultimately decides to join his pal for a day of teacherless mischief. The boys toss their backpacks into the bushes and head to the nearby Brutal Strand shopping mall. Dressed in their school uniforms, the boys arouse the suspicion of shopkeepers, a few of whom want to know why they aren't in school. "It's a holiday," the boys answer, before making off with whatever trinkets and goods they can fit in their coat pockets. A toy soldier, a fruit, a tin of blue modeling paint. They pass the school day shoplifting and running amok in the mall, jumping on tables, harassing an elderly woman, and gobbling stolen candy and snacks. 2-year-old James Bulger is also at the mall. His mother, Denise, treats him to a ride on a mechanical seesaw and half a sausage roll. James is a flaxen-haired child with a playful smile. He's his mother's pride and joy, her second chance. She miscarried her first child. Now she watches James like a hawk. She doesn't leave his side, but today James is particularly playful, knocking down merchandise from shelves and acting up. She lets him wait by the door, just for a moment, as she ducks into the butcher shop. John sees him first. A little boy, a baby really, wearing a hooded sweatshirt and teeny tiny sneakers. He looks like a doll. Earlier they talked about getting a kid for kicks. Robert, posturing, said it would be funny to get a kid lost in the traffic outside the mall. John said he wanted to let off some steam by bullying a child. He hadn't hit one in a long time. At first it was just talk. 2 kids acting tough to impress each other. Then John tried to run off with a toddler in the clothing store. He was almost successful, too, until the child's mother intervened. But this little boy is all alone, standing there, eating candy. His mother is nowhere in sight. "Come along, baby," they say, and he does. James looks up, beaming at the two older boys. They are like him, but bigger and stronger. One day maybe he will be as big and strong. His fingers are still sticky from the sausage roll as he reaches out to take John's hand. Security cameras captured the three boys walking together through the mall. Robert and John goof around, giggling and swatting at each other. The cameras follow them, recording their movements. The boys getting smaller and smaller until they are no longer visible on screen. Inside the butcher shop, Denise pays for her purchase. She is gone less than 2 minutes. Baby James is no longer standing by the door. Frantic, Denise runs through the mall, calling, "James! James!" With no real plan, Robert and John leave the mall and amble through town, little James at their side. They're not in sight, two young schoolboys with a baby. Curious onlookers stare at the trio, wondering where their parents are. The boys walk for 2 more miles. Along the way, they are stopped by several adults, including a woman who gives them directions to the nearest police station so they can drop off the wayward toddler they claim they found at the bottom of the hill. The woman considers accompanying them, but chooses to stay behind with her younger daughter, a decision that will come back to haunt her. James, tired, screaming for his mother and dragging his feet. He's beginning to get on the boys' nerves, and they regret running off with him. They take turns carrying him. Robert holds James by his arms, John by his legs. Near canal, they hit James and drop him on his head. They leave him there, but the toddler, innocent and confused, runs after them. Robert takes James's hand. The boys pull his hood closed around his face to conceal the bruises they've just given him. An elderly woman watches from her window as the boys rough up the baby. She closes her curtains. Shortly after a while, a passing motorist witnesses one of the boys giving James a persuasive kick. He's in a rush and drives off. Later, the press will dub these witnesses the Liverpool 38, a reference to the Kitty Genovese case. In Forest Hills, New York, 38 people looked and listened on, immobile, as Genovese was brutally attacked outside her apartment building. Around 5:45 p.m., the boys take James to the railway. There, they splash the stolen blue modeling paint in the baby's face. He is kicked and beaten with bricks and stones. John hits him with a 22-pound iron bar he finds lying on the ground. They stick batteries in his mouth and pull down his pants. James appears to be dead when they move his tiny body onto the train tracks. In fact, he is still alive, though fading fast as they cover his face with bricks. The boys wanted to appear that a passing train killed the child. Unalived the child. The two boys head to the video store where Susan Venables, out looking for a truant son, finds them. Furious, she marches John down to the police station for a lecture. James Bulger's abduction had already made the news. Ironically, Susan had been worried that day that John was in danger of being kidnapped by the same scary stranger everyone assumed took the little boy. On Sunday, St. Valentine's Day, 4 young boys playing on the railway make a gruesome discovery. A body so small it appears to be an unalived cat or doll. Upon closer inspection, they realize with horror that it is an unalived little boy. The boy's body had been severed in half. The autopsy reveals that James had received 40 blows to the head and body. The medical examiner is unable to determine which of these caused his no longer aliveness. The child was found naked from the waist down and had slight abrasions on his pen 15. His face bears the imprint of a shoe. Mercifully, James died before being run over by the train. Unalive before being run over by the train. Heartsick residents turn the unalive site into a shrine to James. They leave cards, candles, roses, flowers, and toys. Robert, racked with guilt, visits and leaves a single rose. The press quickly dubbed the unalive little boy Jamie. Denise and Ralph Berger have always called their son by his proper name. He was James, not Jimmy or Jim, and not Jamie. Strangers and neighbors and newscasters now refer to their boy by this new name, a fact that upsets the grieving parents. It is a presumptuous but an innocent mistake. In calling him Jamie, it was as if the press and the public were claiming him as their own. His sweet smile, beaming in photographs, the golden mop of hair, the tiny hands, he used too precious to be James. James was formal, adult. No, this sweet baby was Jamie. His smile won your heart. His no longer aliveness broke it. James's unalive event is a horrific, brutal crime made all the more shocking when police released the video footage taken by the mall's security cameras. Viewers watch as James is led away not by some decrepit middle-aged degenerate, but by two nondescript blurry boys. The image quality is poor, making it difficult to positively identify their faces. Even so, a Venable's family friend believes she recognizes them. She contacts the police. 6 days after the event, acting on the woman's tip, police arrest John and Robert for the unalive event of James Bulger. Interviewed at separate police stations, both boys proclaim their innocence. The police are skeptical that two 10-year-olds are capable of committing such a heinous crime. However, the boys' strange behavior gives them pause. Robert is truculent and combatant with the detectives. He tells them, "If I wanted to unalive the baby, I'd unalive my own, wouldn't I?" His brother, Ben. John asks numerous questions about fingerprints and police procedure. He is preoccupied with Robert and whether or not the detectives have spoken to him. "It's that Robert Thompson," he tells them. "He always gets me into trouble." After several days of questioning and being encouraged by their mothers to tell the truth, the boys break. John, crying hysterically, confesses, "I did unalive that baby." When he regains his composure, he tells detectives that Robert done all of it mainly, and that Robert was laughing his head off. Across town, Robert points a finger at John. It was John who lured the baby away from his mother. John who kicked and hit James with the bricks in the iron bar. Robert admits to only pinching the baby and touching him once to get my ears against his belly to see if he was breathing. Then he moved them off the tracks so he wouldn't get chopped in half. Later, the imprint of James's face will be matched to Robert's shoe. John Venables and Robert Thompson are indicted and tried for unalive event. Because of their ages, their names are kept secret. In the press, they are referred to as Child A and Child B. Robert, Child A, is labeled the ringleader. In truth, John had his own bad reputation without Robert. He was a problem child and the bane of his teacher's existence. What would compel two young boys, one of whom was fond of fuzzy dolls and lollipops, to brutalize and unalive a 2-year-old? What was the trigger? The how, although gruesome, was easy enough to decipher. The why was not. A shocked community searched for answers, suspiciously eyeing everything from video games to television violence to mental defect, the former of which was ruled out by the boys, passed a battery of tests proving they were not only sane, but understood right from wrong. Psychologists theorized that the boys took out their frustrations on James, that James was a substitute for the siblings they resented, and for all that was wrong in their young lives. Other, less liberal views held the boys that were plain evil. Indeed, the press compared them to Saddam Hussein. The truth, though less sensational, was more than that the unalive event was caused by a combination of factors. Both boys came from troubled homes, although the Venables' residence was considerably safer than the Thompsons'. By the time John was 10, his mother, Susan, had made 2 unsuccessful unalive attempts. She drank a lot and was frequently depressed. Susan and John's father, Neil, had separated and reconciled several times. Each time, the children, Mark, John, and Michelle, were forced to relocate. His parents' on and off again relationship had a profound effect on John. The child craved attention and stability, sacred commodities in his family. Although Mark was the oldest child, he required the most attention. Burdened with a learning disability and a cleft palate, the 15-year-old was a prime target for bullies. Mark often took out his frustrations on his younger brother, John. 9-year-old Michelle also struggled with a learning disability. John was kind to both siblings, but may have resented them both, especially Mark. Branded a troublemaker, John was a really troubled child crying out for help. He clearly needed counseling. One of his teachers remarked that she had never come across a boy like John in 14 years. At school, he butted his head against things, threw tantrums, rocked back and forth, made strange noises, and even purposefully hurt himself with a pair of scissors. He also attacked a classmate. Rather than address the problem, John was transferred to another school. He continued to act out. He also made a new friend, Robert Thompson. At the time of the unalive event, Susan and Neil Venables were attempting relocation. Susan had her hands full at home. She cried easily, was prone to fly off the handle, slapping her kids in the face. Her open-handed blows stung, but the only scars they left were emotional. The attacks were minor compared to the beatings that took place in the Thompson household. Violence ruled the roost of the Thompsons' modest home. Anne and Robert Sr. had been raised in highly dysfunctional, abusive homes. When they married and started their own family, the chain of A to the use continued. Theirs was a violent and fertile union. Together, the couple had 5 sons. The family would have been bigger, but Robert beat Anne so badly that she miscarried one of their children. He was a frightening character who was fond of scaring his kids. "See the evil in my eyes, twat," he'd say. Robert, the youngest, was 6 when the father abandoned the family for another woman. Anne hit the bottle, and like Susan Venables, tried twice to unalive herself. With the Thompson patriarch gone, the vicious cycle of violence continued. The second youngest of the family was removed from the home by social services after alleging that his oldest brother beat, tarred, and feathered him, and locked him in a tool shed. Eventually, Anne remarried and had another child, a son who displaced Robert as the baby of the family. Despite their ages, Robert and John were tried as adults and tried together at Preston Crown Court. The boys were so small that they could not see over the court railings. To remedy this, they were seated on an elevated platform constructed specifically for them. Seated here, they were able to view the proceedings. They were also now very much on display in the crowded courtroom. This fact would be cited as grounds for a retrial, a request that the court denied. The defendants were so young, so small, and charged with such a big, ugly crime. It defied belief. But then, they weren't the first prepubescent kids to commit an unalive event. Most notable for them was Mary Bell. Like Thompson and Venables, Bell was also British and from an impoverished neighborhood. She was also 10 when she unalived her first victim, a 3-year-old boy. A year later, she and a friend unalived another toddler. Bell carved an M on the boy's stomach and mutilated his genitals. Oh. Child unaliving events are always shocking, always heinous, and particularly repellent to us as a society. When a child is unalived by another child, the crime is all the more shocking and incomprehensible. And enraging. Anger was the driving force behind the mob of protesters who waited for hours outside the courthouse to get a glimpse at the little monsters who unalived Jamie Boger. The mob, several hundred strong, screamed obscenities and threw rocks and eggs at the police van transporting the boys to court. John and Robert plead not guilty. Neither took the stand. Their voices would be heard anyway. The courtroom listened in rapt silence to the audio tapes of the boys' police interviews, and in John's case, his confession. John cries often on tape, a high-pitched and at times hysterical sound that members of the jury found almost unbearable. A few adults were moved to tears. Robert, in contrast, sounds cocky and belligerent. He doesn't cry on tape, nor does he cry in court, a fact that underscores the public perception of him as a hardened unaliver. Raised as a Thompson, Robert learned early on to put on a tough facade. It was a survival mechanism. He told his mother, Anne, that he was afraid to cry in court because he was afraid to look like a baby. Adults who should have known better viewed Robert's lack of tears and constant fidgeting as a proof of his moral depravity. John fared better in the public's eye. He was portrayed as a weak, immature young boy who fell under the sway of a 10-year-old's Bengali. The psychiatrists and social workers who evaluated the boys were not permitted to testify on their behalf. Although there were enough mitigating factors to win leniency for the boys, Robert's severely dysfunctional and abusive family, John's emotional problem, and the lack of stability at home, to name just a few, the defense offered no defense. Instead, the boys' barristers, the British term for attorney, each blamed the other child for the crime. Prosecutor Richard Henriquez didn't buy it. He argued that both children were equally guilty. Together, they took James away from his mother and from the Strand, one holding his hand, the other leading the way. He said in his summation, "Together, they hurt James. Robert Thompson delivered a persuasive kick, while John Venables chose to shake James. They each heard each other lie to adults. If ever a crime was committed jointly and together, then this was a crime." Further, Henriquez continued that the crime was premeditated, a claim that the defendants' barristers hotly contested. Robert's barrister, David Turner, argued that the boys would not have paraded James Bulger through their own neighborhood past dozens of adults if they had planned from the beginning to unalive him. Turner suggested an alternate intention. These boys were saddled by their own mischief with a little toddler who must have been tired out, as they were themselves. He suggested that the boys were silently hoping one of these adults would intervene and take the baby off their hands. Tragically, no one did. The trial lasted 17 days. No one was surprised by the jury's verdict. Robert, having lived with the stigma of being a Thompson, was certain he would be convicted. He was right. Both boys were found guilty as charged. Judge Michael Moreland addressed the young defendants. The unaliving of James Bulger was an act of unparalleled evil and barbarity. In my judgment, your conduct was both cunning and very wicked. The boys were then sentenced to detention at Her Majesty's pleasure, a clause under British law that allows the government to hold prisoners for an indeterminate time. Moreland explained to the boys that they would be imprisoned for many, many years until the Home Secretary is satisfied that you have matured and are fully rehabilitated, and until you are no longer a danger to others. As the defendants were led from the courtroom, a spectator cried out, "How do you feel now, you little bastards?" John Venables and Robert Thompson were the youngest convicted unalivers in 250 years of British history. Their trial had been a fairly charged, emotional event. The Venables and the Thompson families received numerous unalived threats and were forced to go into hiding. Yet time often cools tempers. At least one juror had a change of heart. Looking back, I am ashamed that I allowed myself to be coerced by the judge and prosecution to agree to a verdict of guilty of unalive. Jury foreman Vincent Moss told Guardian reporter Libby Brooks, "A proper judgment would have been that they had behaved like confused, frightened, and stupid children, caught up in a situation that they had created but could no longer deal with. The judge's pronouncement that they were evil was just wrong. They didn't have the moral and intellectual capacity for this to be an accurate description." The boys were served 8 years in separate, secret, secure youth detention facilities. They were released in 2001. For their own safety, they were both given new identities. So, that was... Yeah, I watch a lot of, stuff from, Misery Machine and other, true crime stuff, so it was just, you'd never, I don't think, really get used to it. So that... Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you want to continue reading the true crime stuff, let me know. I know I started quite a few times, just getting used to that and, reading on camera. But I really enjoy reading to you guys. I think it's fun. I want to do creepypastas as well. I think that's a blast. Yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments. I know this was a longer form content, but I mean, that's what reading kind of is. And if you're a Law & Order fan, let me know, what was your favorite episode? Do you like SVU, the regular, Criminal Intent? Yeah. Let's go ahead and chit-chat in the comments. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day, no matter which point in time you are at, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.